Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the East Riding of Yorkshire series. Together with the unparished city of Hull, it forms the county of the same name. There's 172 parishes here. Which one are we in today? Welcome back to the East Riding of Yorkshire, everybody. We've only got a few left that touch the coastline, and one of the ones that's left is a place I know a lot of people have been waiting for. Last night we spent a night in the end house, the Ashburnham guest house, which you can see along this row here. Nice colourful front there. It looks like something out of Balamory, doesn't it? I have a guest with me in this episode too. Make your presence felt. It's our Nikki, of course. Anywhere where there's sea, Nikki's bound to follow it. Absolutely. To be following me. Let's have a walk around this place. It's going to be a nice day. The sun's up. It looks pretty decent to me.
It's going to be breezy but nice.
Welcome to Hornsea. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Hornsea, Headland Lake. For the past few weeks, the East Riding map has had quite a noticeable gap on the coast. Today, we will fill that gap in by taking on another popular family coastal resort. Welcome to the town of Hornsea, to which many thousands of people have been flocking for years when the weather's warm. Actually, even when it's cold, it still has plenty to attract people. Hornsea was famous for its pottery, and although it's now gone, the site it stood on is still used for something else. The main selling point, though, is of course the sea. Hornsea possesses one of the best, cleanest and tidiest promenades in the country, and was for a long time a favourite holiday destination for those living in Hull. As we know from several previous episodes, it was connected to the city by way of the Hull and Hornsea Railway, and the station still stands. These days you can't catch a train to it, but you can walk or cycle to it thanks to the channel's favourite long-distance trail. Yep, it's right here in Hornsea where the Trans-Pennine Trail starts and ends. Hornsea literally means Headland Lake, which brings us to another key feature in the town, the Mere. It's that which gives Hornsea its name. It was even advertised by the railway company as the Lakeland by the sea. Are we all up then for some sea air? Let's get some in our lungs. We begin early in the morning on the central promenade with this view into the fairly calm waters of the North Sea. With quite literally nobody around at this hour, this is the best time to capture it. If the weather's warm, Hornsea gets busy very quickly. It's been a popular seaside resort for decades and it still attracts thousands of people year on year. It might never be as popular as the likes of Bridlington or Scarborough, but it was historically a top holiday destination for people living in Hull. So much so, in fact, it was and still is billed as the Lakeland by the sea, a reference to Hornsea Mere. The central promenade features this little shelter, which is effectively a beach shop that doubles as a toilet block. You may note the markings upon it that read HUDC. That's in reference to the former Hornsea Urban District Council, one of the forerunners to Humberside and by extension the East Riding of Yorkshire. Job availabilities are often seasonal here thanks to the tourism, which holds the majority stake in the town's economy, but there is also some small-scale manufacturing here too. People still come here all year round. I mean, you still can't beat fish and chips by the sea, even in winter. There's nothing quite like the sound of the sea, especially in the morning, the waves lapping against the shore. It's a soothing sound. Now, you might be able to recognise from this point here some of the places we've already been. I've done all the villages around Hornsea already. In the distance over there, you can see a spire that's pointing up into the sky. That's the church at Mappleton. So that's how far away it is from the centre of downtown Hornsea. And speaking of downtown Hornsea, we're now going to move away from the prom temporarily because we're going to go and look at some of the other things that this town has on offer. Hornsea Hub is one of the town's newest features, having only opened in October 2020. Effectively, it's a leisure centre, but it has a bit more than just a swimming pool. It stands on the site of an original leisure centre which was completely refurbished and extended in a project that cost £9.9 million. This saw the addition of a new cafe area and changing rooms, an exercise studio, and the refurbishment of 2 squash courts. The local press have since described its facilities as stunning. Continuing down the promenade, we pass some more seaside shops on the way to a big tower. Now, if you easily recognise this, you've been following me for a while. This tower marks the easternmost point of the Trans-Pennine Trail, the long-distance footpath and cycleway we've met countless times before. It runs for 215 miles from east to west and terminates in Southport. Work on the trail started in 1999. Even though the idea for its construction originated in Barnsley, where its head office is based, it's another reason why people come to Hornsea, either to start their journey along it or to finish it. Completing the trail has become something of a life goal for many. Close by, we found Emma Stothart's Hornsea Wave, which celebrates the natural and historic beauty of the Yorkshire coast. In the same open green space is the Free French Memorial, which takes the form of a cairn. In 1981, Hornsea was twinned with La Grande Motte in the south of France, a consequence of links forged in 1944 when Free French soldiers were stationed here. They used the Wakefield Seaside School as their barracks, which was opened in 1938 and built by Wakefield Metropolitan District Council. It later became the Hornsea Outdoor Residential Centre. Sands Lane now, where we have a triangulation point. It's rare to find one that stands in a publicly accessible place, so I was all over this one. It can be found in front of a modern apartment block called the Broadway, where Nikki was weighing up which flat would be best suited to a sea view. Sands Lane also has a block of these things, amusements, or as we call them, slots. You can't come to a British seaside resort without having a blast in one of these. They are a seaside staple after all. Hornsea has 2 sets of slots. The second one is close to Hornsea Hub, overlooking the promenade. Before Sands Lane becomes Railway Street, we have the police station, seen here on Parva Road. This, along with an adjoining courthouse, was built and opened in 1973. It replaced a previous police station on Hornsea's main street, New Beggin, which was converted to offices for the former Holderness District Council. Now we've come around the corner onto Railway Street, and at this point you'll notice some artwork on the floor and several references to the Trans-Pennine Trail. Here, we are standing on the route of the Hull and Hornsea railway line, which forms part of it. Now, the reason that says Hornsea Town on the wall there is all to do with this building behind us. We've seen all the stations now between Hull and Hornsea, and this is the end of the Hull and Hornsea Railway. This is the old railway station, and this is next to talk about. Hornsea couldn't have developed into the town it is today without the Hull and Hornsea Railway. The town expanded immensely in the Victorian era with the coming of the line in 1864. Originally, though, this station was not the terminus. Hornsea had 2 stations, Hornsea Town and Hornsea Bridge. It was the latter that was the original terminus. This one, Hornsea Town, was originally named just Hornsea, but the town suffix was added in 1950. It closed in 1964 and has now been restored and converted into housing after a period of dereliction. It remains a Grade 2 listed building. Hornsea has several parks, but by far our favourite was this one. These are the Memorial Gardens on Park Row, which are guarded by 2 ferocious-looking lions at their eastern end. These once stood outside the entrance to the Criterion Cinema in Hull. The park was once known as Grosvenor Gardens and was initially laid out as a private square in 1877 for the use of residents whose properties overlooked it. In 2008, the gardens were redesigned and now incorporate a brand new war memorial. Many events take place here, including Hornsey's annual Remembrance Day service. Now to Burton Road, where we find the old Lifeboat House. I wish I'd filmed more of this because it has a cracking historical timeline. Let's discuss it as we head along Burton Road. When Hornsey's original lifeboat was a horse-drawn affair, it was based in that tiny shed-like building. It was withdrawn in 1924 and the hut became the fire station. When the present fire station was built on Southgate in 1965, it was then converted into the town hall, believe it or not, in 1974. When the new town hall on New Beggin was opened, it was then turned into a private residence. Madness. Next we have Summer Court. It's a Tudor-style building which makes it one of the most attractive-looking care homes this channel has ever seen. It can be found on Football Green. This is where the mess room was once located, used by the men from a seaplane base on Hornsea Mere during World War I. More on that shortly. At the end of the road is the Sacred Heart Catholic Church. Until 1928, Hornsey's Catholics attended Mass at a private chapel in Marton, but in that year, a wooden church was built in the town. The present one, designed by George I. Williams, replaced it in 1956. Now on Southgate we have a cross, and this has a complicated history. It's not just one cross, it appears to be a combination of two. They were both 14th century according to this information panel nearby. As for its position, 19th century antiquarians reckon it might have been the site of Hornsey's second market. It can be found in front of these two buildings at the entrance to Hornsea Cemetery. One was a chapel, the other was a boardroom and office for the local Hornsea Health Authority. They became private houses in 2007, and here are the neighbours, quiet and trouble-free. So typically we're in a cemetery and Nikki has been looking around at the graves. You found this one, haven't you, Nikki? Yeah. Give us a little bit of info about this guy.
Well, there's not an awful lot, but John Frederick Wilson Lord is the second lieutenant of the King's Own Yorkshire, LI.
Whatever that is, LI.
And he was killed in the Battle of Arras.
In 1917. A couple more for you as well. We've got a couple of war graves here.
Yeah, second lieutenant HS McDowell RAF.
Yeah.
First World War.
And the other one is
J. Rendell, Lancashire Fusiliers, again, First World War. And interestingly, I've not seen this, I'm assuming it does happen, but these war graves are literally stuck in family plots, like as an extra headstone.
Would make a bit of sense. If you
but look at this plot here. It's clearly, you know, like a plot that could get at least 4 if not 6 interments in. There's already a big cross headstone, and then literally this headstone has been, you know, almost plonked in the middle of it, but you know.
Now it's up Southgate we go to the Mere, which is the landmark that gives the town its name, because Hornsea means Headland Lake. These days, the HQ of a sailing club, Hornsea Mere is the largest natural lake in Yorkshire. It's shallow in places and supports a wide variety of wildlife and plants. In 1595 it was bought by Marmaduke Constable of Wassant Hall, and it's remained part of that estate ever since. For centuries the Mere was the private preserve of its owners, although in the early 19th century people were allowed to fish here if they made a donation to the poor first. In 1917, during World War I, the Mere was used by the Royal Naval Air Service as a base for their seaplanes, which patrolled the coast. Numbers 248 and 251 squadrons operated from it, although the latter used non-water-based aircraft. These streets we find ourselves in now all back onto the Mere. We thought this area was a bit of a mishmash, lots of narrow, poky little streets which didn't have any kind of organisation to them. This area is also on the edge of the town centre, located as it is behind the marketplace. Jefferson Park provides a little open space and playground for the locals. We're about to enter the oldest part of Hornsea. To get to the marketplace we used a short footpath that runs around the back of a pub. As a medieval town, Hornsea had some importance as a market centre, partly based on fishing and the seaborne trade, but now tourism drives most of the economy. And there are plenty of pubs for the tourists. The New Inn is the one we've just walked behind, and this is it from the front. Despite the name, it's always been called the New Inn. This one has free pool on a Monday evening, karaoke on a Friday night, and hosts live music at weekends. There's more pubs later, but next we turn our attention to St Nicholas's Church. This dates back to the 13th century, but it had several alterations in the 14th and 15th. In typical East Riding coastal fashion, it's made of cobbles and stone dressings, and much of it is in the Perpendicular style. It was extensively restored in the 1860s by George Gilbert Scott, including the rebuilding of the upper tower. Further 20th century work was done by Broderick, Lowther and Walker. The tower used to be surmounted by a spire, but that fell down in 1733. A restored market cross, though, can still be found in the churchyard. Considered part of the church is the building next door. You might get a little confused looking at this. This was initially the Church Institute. It was later renamed to the Parish Room. They are one and the same thing, but both titles can still be seen clearly in the stonework. Directly opposite this is Bank Street, and either side of it are two former banks. Financially, Hornsea was much like any other town. It had branches of HSBC, NatWest, Lloyds and the Halifax, but they've all now gone. In 2023, however, a new banking hub was opened on New Beggin in a unit formerly occupied by Poundland. Although quite modern as town centres go, old buildings with long histories are all over the place here. One such example is the Vicarage, a delightful Regency villa built between 1831 and 32 by George Jackson and David Thorp. That's not the only one either. Nearby, a blue plaque will likely draw your attention to Burns Farm. For nearly 300 years, this was tenanted by the Burn family. It was originally a single-storey cobbled building dating back to the late 16th century. It now forms part of Hornsea Museum. A visit to the Hornsea Museum is a step back into the past. Its rooms and outbuildings contain displays with hundreds of old photographs of the town and surrounding villages, the Hull and Hornsea Railway, the brick and tile works, various shipwrecks and the lifeboats. By way of 2,000 examples of it, it also charts the history of the Hornsea Pottery Company from 1949 until its closure. So too does this little garden over the road, whose words written into the floor are worth a read if you have time. Also in this area, we learned Hornsea is a fair trade town. It's been plastic free since 2018. And here is the dead centre of all that trade today. For the next quarter of a mile, New Beggin, which is the street we've been walking down since we were at the church, becomes much more commercial. It's worth noting though that Hornsea has very few chain stores, and that's a good thing. Perhaps slightly out of place here are the Pickering Almshouses. These were built in 1908 by Christopher Pickering. They are studio flats, and there are 6 of them, each with 1 bedroom. They were last renovated in 1992. The next section is all shops. There are far too many to talk about them all, so instead I'll let you enjoy them in peace. Now we've arrived at the town hall. This began its life as a Wesleyan school, then became a church hall, and finally the town hall it is today. It was designed by Hull architect John K. James in the Gothic Revival style and was completed in 1875. Hornsea Town Council have owned this since 2011. Next door is the Methodist chapel, for which the building was originally a school. This too was also designed by James, but it's 5 years older than its next door neighbour, having been here since 1870. The primitive Methodists also had a presence here. We'll see where shortly. Next door is the site of the old Star Cinema, which opened in the 1920s. It was demolished in 1973 to make way for the library, which you'll find there today. At this point, I lost Nikki momentarily thanks to a collection of charity shops on the other side of the road, so I opted to capture the United Reformed Church while I waited for her return. Predating all the other non-conformist groups in Hornsea, the URC goes back to 1798. Meetings were originally held in a house and then in a building on Southgate. In 1872, Samuel Musgrave of Hull built this attractive church on the corner of New Road. The centrepiece of Hornsea town is arguably Hall Garth Park. Now a massive public open space, this was originally the grounds of a hall or a manor house. In 1650 it occupied a 2-acre site, but by 1696 the buildings had gone. Remnants of the moat which surrounded the original house can still be seen. In 1809 Hallgarth became the property of Peter Acklam and later belonged to the constables of Wassend Hall. From 1898 until the 1970s there was a 9-hole golf course here, but that was replaced by the one at Rollston. Now it's a good place for a bibble, according to Jackie. Well, I have to say the word bimble is certainly, I've never come across that before, have you?
A new word in your lexicon, I've heard of it.
Bimble. It must mean walk, right? There you go. The more you know, eh? You learn something new every day. Now, here's something for you. There is a football goal in this park, but I think we'll term that a waterlogged pitch. You're not going to be playing much football on that. More like water polo, I think. Right, we're heading out of the park now. We'll take a left turn at those gates over there. Exiting the park, you're met with the Hornsea School and Language College. Education records in Hornsea begin way back in 1698. By the 19th century there were several private schools and a national school was built on Mearside in 1845. This school was built in 1958 on the site of Hornsea House. That was the home of Joseph Armitage Wade, the self-styled King of Hornsea. It began life with just 500 pupils, but by 1971 the school's population had grown to over 1,000 and it became a comprehensive school. It remains so today and also has a sixth form building on its playing field. So who was Joseph Wade? He was the man who founded the original Hornsea Pier Company. A pier was also planned by Pierre de Guillon, who obtained a Board of Trade order in 1876 for a 2,454 foot long pier with a tramway. Victorian Hornsea then seemed destined to have two, but by 1879 de Guillon's company was bankrupt. Hornsea has no pier today. Wade's pier, although it did get built, had long gone before the turn of the 20th century. It was damaged in 1880 by a ship called the Earl of Derby and was demolished in 1897. Hornsea House may have gone, but the old hall in the marketplace is still here. This was once owned by Margaret Strickland Constable, who was a wartime nurse and in 1917 saved the life of Lord of the Rings author J.R.R. Tolkien. Whilst in the Lancashire Fusiliers, Tolkien spent 9 weeks in her care, recovering from trench fever. Opposite her former abode is the Rose and Crown, another pub that's popular with holidaymakers, day trippers and locals. Inside this one, the main bar features a mural painting by a local artist, and you can get a great view of Hornsea Mere from the garden. Top-notch stuff. Not far away from that is the Victoria Inn. Now this one looks very different to how it did just a few short years ago. Considered a large town centre pub, it was refurbished in 2015 and acquired a separate games area and restaurant which is available for private bookings. It also has accommodation available in 5 first-floor rooms. Over the roundabout is a former Pentecostal church. Designed by Joseph Wright in the Italianate style, this opened in 1864 and was originally used by the primitive Methodists. Now housing, the lower floor was originally used as the Sunday school. Now we're heading north along the road to Attic. Off to the left there are many private streets with huge houses. This is the affluent end of town. One of the biggest properties in this area would be an old corn mill. The tower still stands, although it's now been truncated with a low conical roof replacing the cap and sails. Windmills were plentiful in Hornsea in medieval times. 2 belonging to the Abbey of St Mary's were recorded in the 16th century, and there was a third at Hornsea Burton. Off this road, by the way, is the main sports ground, where Hornsea Town Football Club play. On the sports theme, Hornsea Bowling Club are up here too. They were formed in 1911 and their first match was held in the Promenade Gardens. Opposite that are the town's allotments, because yes, even though we are in a landmark heavy location, I can't resist adding these for all the fans. Now at this point there's also a household recycling plant, but look carefully and you'll see a tall Victorian brick building near its site. That's an old Waterworks and it was built in 1878. There's some fabulous pictures of it linked below, which beat admiring it from this horrible, slippery, muddy path, by the way. Well, every route's got its hard bit, and that path definitely was one of the hardest things I think I've ever had to do. Very slippery, slimy, sliding around all over the place, but it was the only path on this route, so, you know, you take one for the team sometimes, don't you, Nikki?
If you say so.
So it brings you out in a housing estate. As you can see, here is said housing estate, and all we've got to do now is follow this road basically, and it takes us down to where the hospital is, and then from there we're not far away from where we began, at the seafront. So this is the hospital. Its official name is the Hornsea War Memorial Cottage Hospital. The facility, which was built as a lasting memorial to soldiers who died in World War I, opened in 1923. Originally providing just 8 beds, it joined the NHS in 1948 and later benefited from a major refurbishment in 2012. It used to have a minor injuries unit, but that closed in April 2018. That was met with a furious protest by the locals. Around 100 of them gathered to make their feelings known. Nowadays, with no A&E, patients must go to one of Beverley, Bridlington or Goole. We are almost at the end. Between here and the seafront, it's a case of taking in some of the local floral displays and admiring more of the Victorian architecture which came with the railways back in the 1860s. Hornsea was considered a fashionable place for the wealthy. A lot of people came for health reasons and sea bathing became popular. In addition, Hornsea also had a mineral spring whose water was believed to be medicinal. Among the famous visitors who came here to take it all in was the author Charlotte Bronte, who it's known stayed in Hornsea for a short time in 1853. Here's one final pub, and this one's right on the northern part of the seafront. This is the Marine Hotel. It was built in the early 1900s, and by that time Hornsea was in full swing as a tourist attraction. It remains a popular family pub today, with outdoor seating and views of the North Sea. The final landmark on the walk is the Coastwatch Station, operated by NCI. This occupies the former East Riding Council's foreshore building and was originally used by the Coast Guard. It was ideally placed too, as it could see everything from Flamborough Head down to Withensea. So that might be it for the walk, but Hornsea has far, far more than all of this. As we drive out of town, let's talk a bit about Hornsea Burton, which was a separate settlement that I imagine not many people know about. Hornsea was originally known as Hornsea with Burton in official records going back to 1801. Burton no longer exists, or at least not in its original form. It was a hamlet which has now been swallowed by the sea. So too has the site of Hornsea Beck, another former settlement. There were some other hamlets too which were also depopulated. Hornsea Burton even had its own mere, although it's likely it was nowhere near the size of the one we all know and love today. Records in 1280 show it was divided from Hornsea Mere by a causeway. Although now beneath the waves, Hornsea Burton sort of lives on in a sense. The southern part of the town has adopted the name. Indeed, there's even a Hornsea Burton primary school along this very road. To go with Hornsea Burton and Hornsea Beck, you can see the remains of a third settlement if you know where to go. My original walking route, which I later shortened, would have included Southorpe, a former medieval village. Now a scheduled ancient monument, the site of Southorpe includes part of its associated field system, and it's situated to the south of Hornsea Mere. The settlement is visible as a series of well-defined earthworks standing up to 1.5 metres high. Records suggest Southorpe was still in existence in the 17th century, but by 1809 the settlement was abandoned. Southorpe also has a World War II pillbox. We needed a few things from the local supermarket before we left it all behind, so next I took the opportunity to capture the biggest supermarket in the town, Hornsea's branch of Tesco. This opened in 2012 and it sits on part of the old Hull and Hornsea Railway. It's not terribly popular with local traders. Since opening, this has forced some small businesses to go to the wall, purely because they can't compete. And although business is still thriving in Hornsea, it's a worrying sign for the future. Here's a roundup of some of the other bits which didn't feature on the walk. First of all, we have the Floral Hall. This is on the seafront not far away from the Marine Hotel. It was built in 1913 and it's designed as a typical Victorian pavilion. It was based on the Floral Pavilion just up the coast in Scarborough, but it is of course much smaller. It was constructed of cast iron and steel with a glass roof by J.K. Barr and Son of Hornsea and W.H. Haywood of Huddersfield. Off New Beggin there's a little known tower. This is called Bettison's Folly and it was built sometime between 1829 and 1853. It was built by William Bettison, hence the name. He was a Hull-based brewer who built the Folly in what was then his garden. In those days, because communication was by sight, its purpose was quite simple. His manservant would climb the tower every day to look out for him. Upon spotting him descending Southorpe Hill, he would then run down the tower to ensure dinner was served as his master walked into his house. During World War II, the tower was reused as an air raid lookout point and siren because Hull was the most heavily bombed UK city after London. The tower, although easily accessible, is rarely open to the public. Hornsea also has a golf club. The course was designed by Sandy Hurd, but was modified in its early years by Dr. Alistair Mackenzie and James Braid. And here's a bit about Hornsea Wind Farm, which is located in the North Sea, 75 miles off the coast. It was built in 2018 and the first turbines, a collection known as Hornsea 1, began supplying power to the national grid in February 2019. The turbines were all installed by October of that year. Since then, it's grown. 2 more subzones known as Hornsea 2 and Hornsea 3 have been added, with the British government giving the final approval for Hornsea 4 last year. Hornsea 4 is expected to have 180 giant wind turbines and have the capacity to generate enough renewable energy to power 1 million homes. That's impressive. Lastly, we cannot cover Hornsea without a piece on its most famous business. That was, without a doubt, Hornsea Pottery. Shown here are some examples of their products which you can still buy in the town today, despite the fact that the pottery is gone. Hornsea Pottery was founded by 2 brothers, Colin and Desmond Rawson. It quickly grew from being a backyard purveyor of tourist trinkets to the largest studio pottery in the world, employing over 700 people. Its rapid growth was generated by widespread popularity and design-led inspiration. What's interesting is that it was located a long way from the UK's traditional pottery heartlands in Staffordshire, yet still managed to become greatly successful. Hornsea Pottery developed unique and groundbreaking techniques and designs, many of which were influenced by the Rawsons' textile backgrounds. It truly was one of those great British design stories, and even now Hornsea Pottery remains a much loved and influential brand with a timeless appeal. And although the pottery is no longer here, I can show you where it was. If you travel south out of the town towards Mapleton, you'll pass Hornsea Freeport. This stands on the site of the pottery and it was established in 1992. It began life as Hornsea Pottery Freeport, as the company wanted to expand. It was developed by Freeport Leisure, which carried out an expansion scheme to create a shopping village that catered for the increasingly popular pastime of leisure shopping. Soon though, the pottery and Freeport Leisure went their own separate ways. By the mid-1990s, the pottery was finding survival increasingly difficult because of cheaper imported products from foreign manufacturers. It eventually ceased production in 2000. The Freeport, although not terribly busy, does remain a tourist attraction. And that's it. That's Hornsea, the Victorian coastal resort built with the railways and dubbed the Lakeland by the Sea. And isn't it just brilliant? See you later, folks. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.